Hi, I'm Wolfie Baby, and I'm making my very first talking head video in response to Rachel's Ghost 2024 Beatle tag. I've been a record collector for over 50 years, and I think I can pinpoint the moment I became a collector when I bought my very first Beatle album, 1962 to 1966, the Red Album. Because in the US, it came with an insert that not only gave you the listing of all the tracks on the Red and the Blue album, but for your information, gave you a very good American discography. Singles, 8-tracks, cassettes, and I immediately started jotting down like what I needed to get and knew I was going to start building a collection. So I decided to do it backwards. I started with Let It Be. It was okay. Not a super big fan of it. But then I moved on to Abbey Road, which is a mind-blowing masterpiece when you're getting into the Beatles. I skipped Yellow Submarine, probably like most of us did. So that leads me to the very first question on Rachel's list. What is the album that you have the most copies of? And of course, that would be the Beatles, otherwise known as the White Album. Now, this is just a regular US copy on an orange label, on an orange capital label. But I used to play this like either on my dad's stereo or when I finally bought my own turntable on my turntable. But nowadays I have the system of my lifetime. Probably don't need to upgrade it much more anymore. I mean, the last thing on my list, I want to get a moving coil stereo cartridge. I just moved up to a mono cartridge. It's mind-blowingly good. But anyway, this one. Now, it's significant to me because it's the album that took me into high school. Learning all this new music, I learned how to play Rocky Raccoon by ear on guitar, and I used to sing it with my sister. Now, my sister hated her first name, so when we got to the line, her name was McGill, and she called herself Lil, but everyone knew her as Nancy. My sister actually eventually changed her name legally to Nancy. So, it's special to me. Now, it'd be boring to show 9 copies of a White album, but there is one that's kind of special. I mean, they're all special to me, different reasons. Mono, stereo, UK first press stereo. But I'm enamored of Australian copies. But it's an actual White album. I know there are other copies, but this one is on a 1 EMI box Parlophone label. Show a Bootleg. Now, a couple months ago, I actually came across what to me was my best bootleg find. That would be Alpha and Omega, the Beatles, Alpha and Omega. Now, this is the album that spurred Alan Klein to actually put out the Red and the Blue album. Came out in 1972, but it's a 4-album set. But what's special about this copy is that I definitely got it from a fan, because when I opened it up, on the inside, it had a really sweet inscription. If you can make it out, it says December 30th, 1972, California Dream, where did you go? As you can see, it has the original receipt from December of 1972 from 6701 Hollywood Boulevard, so somewhere near where the wax hand got out probably. But it sold for $8, December 1972. Also inside the box, from 2014, there was a Daily News insert 50 years ago today that celebrated the Beatles' landing at JFK. So this was just a very cool find to find inside a box, to get something from a real fan. So, what's the last album you bought? Well, the last album I bought, actually, I just received today. Haven't cleaned it yet. But it's The Beatles, Volume 3. This is a Mexican issue, the third Mexican album released by the Beatles. Has a very cool mod type picture of them, right? But what I love about this is that, as you can see, all the titles are in Spanish, and sometimes a little bit of an awkward translation, but El Diablo en su corazón, the devil in her heart, dinero es lo que quiero, money, that's what I want, y por favor, señor cartero, please, Mr. Postman, everything, it's just very cool. Anyway, it came on this is a 1979 reissue of the 1964 release of this album, and it's on a lime green Capitol label. So that's my foreign album. Believe me, I have a lot more than one. A solo album by a Beatle, my favorite solo album, without a doubt, Band on the Run. This is a 1973 in shrink with the hype sticker, the price code on the back of this truly excellent album. When it was released, it came with this nifty poster of just Polaroids that Paul and the gang took on their trip to Africa. And it has this really super original inner sleeve. It's a hard cardboard with a great picture of Paul, Linda, now the late Denny Lane. So anyway, that's my favorite solo album. A non-UK album. Oh, and it also had, of course, a very special label, Paul, Linda, and Denny. So, a non-US, non-UK Beatles album have to go to Japan for the Beatles in Italy. So, this is actually a legit release. Now, looking at it, you would think it's a live album, but it's just a compilation. On the back is what is referred to commonly as the champagne cover. Okay? But this is actually an official release that came out in 1965 in Italy, when companies still had the power to take Beatles songs and rearrange them anyway without their permission and put out compilations. So this one came out in Italy and is a legitimate copy in Spain, Israel, and Japan. It exists in the United States, but only as a bootleg. And of course, like most Japanese releases, it comes with these nice inserts, photographs, Japanese characters all over the place, and I guess the lyrics in Japanese. So, Beatles in Italy from Japan. Okay, show of 45 or an EP. So I thought this was going to give me trouble because all my 45s are still in storage. But I do have an EP that I got about 2 years ago that's not only an EP, but a 45. And now a friend of mine, my best friend in elementary school, used to show me this record, this very same one that an aunt of his brought him back from vacation from Europe, and I just thought it was a treasure back then. But this one, this first issue, has something that's special about it. Now, if I can get it close enough, this is actually a misprint. Everybody knows the song, Do You Want to Know a Secret? But if you look closely, this is, Do You Want to Know a Secret? See that? Very cool to a collector. Okay. Show an album or a song that's a cover of a Beatles song. Now, I really don't like Beatles covers. Aerosmith famously butchered Come Together for that horrible Sgt. Pepper's Ron Stigwood production. But when in my jazz collection, I love coming across diamonds in the rough, jazz artists occasionally doing Beatles covers. But this one was a thrill. I like, obviously, Latin music, but I love samba. And Sergio Mendes and Brazil 66 Greatest Hits has Day Tripper with a little help from my friends and A Fool on a Hill. So it's awesome to hear the Beatles with a samba beat. Show an album where a Beatle is a guest star. Now, this one, first, you go to Lennon, you think of all his great collaborations with Nilsson and Bowie, George Harrison with the Wilburys. But my favorite, absolutely one of my favorite songs from the 70s, which I consider probably one of the greatest single songs to come out, one of the greatest pops hits, is from this album, Ringo. And the collaboration I'm talking about is Photograph. Photograph co-written with Beatle George Harrison, and George playing a fantastic, beautifully sounding 12-string guitar. I mean, Photograph is an awesome song, and this is a really good album. Probably the closest the Beatles ever got to being on the same album after they broke up. So, show a non-musical album, a non-musical item. So, at this point, I have no choice but just to show you my socks. Don't worry, they're not dirty. My Happy Socks. Happy Socks is a retailer in the United States. And last year, they had this nifty box. I don't know if I can get it close enough, but this is what the socks look like, if you can see that there. They also did, I think they did like Queen socks and AC/DC socks, but this is the Beatles box. Okay, they also had anyway, if you're nice, one thing to remember is always be nice to people in stores, because if you're nice to them, they usually have promo material that they just end up throwing away. And such was the case with Happy Socks. This is one of those cardboard pop-up stands that they just would put in the window. This one's unused. This one's very nice. And I also ended up with a nice poster in a tube that would have just been thrown away. Okay, so finally, or close to finally, is Name Your Favorite Giles Martin remix. I'm not a fan of remixes, but the one part where he did do an excellent job, and you don't mind it at all, has to go to the Love album. It's just a unique remixing and mixing of the songs. 2014. Very nice album. And the bonus question, what is your favorite Beatles channel? Without a doubt, I think the most informative Beatles channel is Andrew from Parlogram Records. I couldn't recommend his channel enough, but obviously I couldn't recommend Rachel's channel more. So I'm gonna give my last goodbye, my hello and my goodbye to all the peanuts in Rachel's peanut gallery, and wish everybody who gets to see this a happy 2024. Take care.